Hello, welcome in the September edition of airhacks, and we have 18 questions. So start with the first question, or the meta question. First, I get lots of emails regarding the status of December airhacks, so the regular Munich workshops or Java EE workshops in Munich. So the workshops in Munich are these ones, and what is the status? Yeah, it's great. They will take place. There are already sufficient or enough attendees, so they will definitely take place. I get daily registrations, so if you would like to attend, hurry up and register. And what's new this time, JavaScript is like Bootstrap for JavaScript developers. I will use a ECMAScript 5 implementation, so NAS one for this. So this is the status of the, also one of the FAQs. So the next one, probably, you can use the built-in chat in Ustream, and I will answer the question. So what you see here are all the registered users in the Ustream chat, or you can answer questions live using Twitter or using the airhacks channel here, or this one. So you can use the airhacks notes channel, or you can use the Ustream chat to ask questions live. Okay. What's new this time? So this the workshop Effective Java EE is online right now, and the great story is it was bought and listened from 32 countries, which is great. So it is really interesting how popular actually Java EE is, and I got lots of comments, interesting comments, and which I try to answer. So if you're interested or you cannot come to Munich, you can just download this workshop. So this about the online edition, and the status of the airhacks TV show right now is, so usually we have around about 100 live attendees, which I think is great. It's like a small conference. And after the show, it gets more and more popular. So we have always more than 1,000 viewers, which is really surprising for an unstructured, chaotic show with lots of questions and answers. So really surprising. So if you go to the YouTube channel, then you will see that is actually as so we have here the airhacks workshops, and they are pretty popular. They're always over 1,000 views. So this is nice. So let's start with the content. And what I did again, what I did, I just gathered the gists of the content, or the digest of the questions on my blog, and all the full questions are on the gists, or on the GitHub gists. So how to replace the Java EE principle, the very first question. And this is the expanded version. So I wrote an article a few years ago about Java EE authentication and authorization. And what I did in the article was the following idea. So I never replaced the origin principle. It is possible, but I never did it in projects. So what I actually did is the following assumption. The regular principle, this is Java EE security principle, comes with the username. And what I'm assuming in my projects is the following. The username is unique. So what it actually means is that we are using the username as a key and look up in a database the real principle with additional data, and I create from the database on the fly my own principle and make it injectable using annotations. This is what I did, the producers annotation in Weld, for instance. So I'm injecting the Java EE security principle to a principal producer. I'm using the current username as a key, look up the additional data in a database, create my own principal, and make it injectable. So this is what I did, and this works well. So there was never a need to create my own principal in my projects. Okay. The next question is a little bit specific. Is about Afterburner, which is the Java FX project, which for unknown reasons becomes more and more popular in recent time. And this is an interesting question. And I got several questions about Java FX. This is why I will cover this. So what Afterburner does, I will very quickly draw it, because it's really easy to understand and draw, but really hard to explain without code. is the following. So if you probably know, JavaFX comes with fxml, and the fxml is like a configuration for a factory. And there is a one relation between a view and the fxml. So this is the assumption in Afterburner. So there is a factory, it lists the fxml and creates a view for you. So the problem with the view is it is fully constructed from fxml, so you don't have actually any reference to the code. There's actually no code. So fxml is just the builder in XML format. So there is no programming. And the main idea was the following. So I'm telling to JavaFX runtime, create for me a presenter. So and knowing that each view is able to return a presenter. So there is a one-to-one relation between view and the presenter. So the JavaFX runtime creates the view, the JavaFX runtime creates my presenter, and my presenter was actually indirectly created by the JavaFX runtime, because what you can do, you can go to JavaFX runtime and say, if you creating something, just use my factory, what I actually did. So what happens then, whatever was created by JavaFX runtime, it supports dependency injection. So inside the presenter, all presenters, you can inject whatever you like with add inject. So this is what I did. This is a simple class injector which actually implements this. So what it means, you can instantiate view with new, and then JavaFX will read fxml because of conventions, create the view, and you can ask the view to return a presenter if you like. Okay, this is the background of Afterburner, and there is, because convention over configuration, what it means, you have one folder in Afterburner is related to a tab, to a panel or something like this. Okay, I hope it's somehow understandable what's happened. And I looked at the code and it looks right. And what the author of the question did is he injected the presenter here, which would work, but the presenter injected here is like, it was not created by the JavaFX runtime. It's just like a Pojo which is created, and this is actually absolutely wrong, because there is presenter is not a singleton. You could have 50 views of type, I don't know, main view, if you like, or what is actually even comes with the Afterburner example. I'm creating 256 views just for fun, like a bubbles, to show the asynchronous creation of the views. So this is actually not right, because you cannot inject the presenter. You actually don't know which one and which instance it is. So this is actually the mistake here. And what really interesting is, the explanation from, I think is James, was really nice, and he really explained the intentions of Afterburner, but I have no idea who James is, but it's a really good job to explaining the intentions behind Afterburner. So this is why Java community is really great. So this was the question regarding Afterburner. So I would like to, okay. Perfect, and welcome John Klingel to the show. So also interesting, Java EE in a movie streaming startup. So let's go to the let's just github.com, and so it seems like the Mr. Bombay or Miss Bombay, who knows, would like to create a startup company with streaming background, and ask, okay, what frameworks to use or which frameworks to use, and is Java 7 or Java the right technology to create startup, to create a streaming setup. And funny enough, I actually forgot to look it up. Tunguska, I think, can I? Wait a second. Yes, in 2009, I was in a similar project, and it was Java 5, Java 6 back then. And what we did was Glassfish v2, I think. So we created a framework, or I don't even know which is framework, was a proof of concept, or what the framework actually did. We had edge servers, and we were able to distribute content to the edge servers, and we used long polling back then for real-time notification, but we also did, we experimented with video streaming. This is one of the requirements. And so we use Glassfish, and we actually evaluated 1,000 of connections. So I think here at 1,500 connections with Glassfish v3, and there was actually no impact on the on threading or memory size because it was long polling. But what we also did back then, there were projects. I think it was called something like Redfire or whatever. It was like open source streaming solution. So where you can integrate with Java EE. So having that said, I think Java EE has nothing to do with streaming. So what you will get from Java EE 7 regarding to streaming is concurrency utilities for Java. So usually all streaming is socket based. So what you will have to do is to add or to dedicate a thread per socket, and you can very easily do it with Java EE. And if you like, probably in this particular case, take a look at Porcupine. This is one of my projects. Porcupine is a GitHub project here, and with Porcupine you can very easily create thread pools and configure the thread pools on the fly. So I tested with Payara and Whitefly, and you can get monitoring for free. So what you will have to do is you will have to find a streaming solution, an encoder or something which delivers the content, and then test a lot how many threads you can actually handle. And what you will probably find is the following, that the application server will be fine, but you will get trouble with the regular Apache, so you will probably have to use something like Nginx or something of this category. So I would probably use a Java EE as the basic start, but it won't help you with the main task to stream movies. And what you will also have to do, you will have to experiment with CDN and content delivery networks and caching solutions, because bandwidth will become an issue in one point of time. But for me, Java is the simplest possible technology, and frameworks you mentioned here, Python and Django. I would say, I guess with Python and Django you will get the same problems as with Java EE. So I don't think Django is a framework which was built as a content management solution. I cannot imagine that you get better support in Django for streaming than in Java EE, but I'm not a Django expert. So and 10,000 unique users would probably mean you never will get 10,000 concurrent views, but even if you get, it will mean you will need 10,000 threads. And now the question is to know how many machines you will need to handle this. You handle this this amount of traffic. So why I would use Java 7? Because in one day you would be able to create a skeleton, a working proof of concept, and then start testing and see, what the problem actually is. Is the problem bandwidth, hardware? Is this the web server? Is this the operating system? So if you have many concurrent requests, probably you will run out of the free ports. So you get, I think, a lot more trouble than frameworks. So this is what I can tell you right now. And look for streaming servers in Java. Let's wait a second. It was something with Fire. Java streaming framework. Java Stream. Java. Java Media Framework is out of support. I think is no more supported. Java streaming and let's say Flash. It was something Flash related. And yeah, it was not for Adobe, but it was a free solution, something like Fire, Java video streaming. No, I won't find it anymore. So just try to find whatever framework you get and expose the threads. So you will have to have access to these threads, to the encoding solution, and then you can make it manageable with Java EE. Okay, the next one, JSF in production and which choices to make. So I will like to go back to the, so no questions here, no questions here. I will go back to the gist. And lots of questions. Do you recommend using JSF for productive applications? So fun enough, part of the effective Java EE, if you go to the effective Java EE, and what I actually did, I started with plain look and feel, simplistic JSF. And what I did, I extended it with cross-fit validation, with HTML5, with some tables, then used prime faces. So I probably, I don't know, in total 20 minutes and half an hour, and it produced and implemented, I would say, a simple but realistic JSF application. So take a look at this, I would say. And but the question, would you recommend this? It really depends what you would like to do. But what's interesting, most of the startups I interviewed on my blog, they use JSF and they were really happy with it. And the question is, how it is possible? How it's possible that a startup is happy with JSF? And the answer is because they don't care about the look and feel a lot, because they are the users and developers in the same person. So they just take whatever table they get from PrimeFace and they're happy with it. So this is why it is very productive for startups, but could be a more troublesome in companies where the users and developers are decoupled, which is strange anyway, but sometimes it is that way. And is there a threshold of quantity of users when one should think about to JSF? So in this year we had 2,500 concurrent sessions open for several hours, and this was not a problem. We had, I think, two actually Glassfish instances, and each instance had 2 GB of RAM. It was not a problem at all, but the application was crazy. It was form-based. There were huge forms with many input fields. JSF is very productive if you are happy with the components. So how to choose the components? Go, for instance, to prime faces, play with the demos, and if you are happy with the components, just use them without any modifications. This is the only mode for JSF. Which front-end technology you can do besides JSF? I would say what I think is necessary to learn the ideas behind HTML5 and JavaScript. This is not that hard. It's really not that hard as Java developer may think. So it's not like complete mess. It's somehow messy, but not completely. And what's also interesting, I also look at the tech radar from ThoughtWorks. And if you go to the tech radar, you see on hold there is a JSF, and the reason for this is we continue to see teams run into trouble using JSF Java services, and are recommended to avoid this technology. So this is also what I see. So what I see, there are lots of projects just using JSF and having no idea why. So none of the users actually looked at the demos from PrimeFace or look at the components. I don't know, whoever was in charge just made a choice and chosen JSF as a general purpose weapon for everything. And then the users were confronted with tables, and for tables is the most critical component, I would say, table and trees. And they were disappointed with functionality. Developers had to fork the components, and this was the beginning of the end. So I would say if the users like the component look and feel and take the components as they are, then JSF is just perfect. Teams seem to choose JSF because it is Java standard, or a crazy architect decided this without just looking at I don't know what, but just said, okay, it looks nice on the slides, so just use it. Yeah, exactly. We think JSF flawed because its programming model encourages use of its own abstractions rather than fully embracing the underlying web model. This is not true at all. Actually, for several years, we use in some project we just use plain JSF with HTML output and use frameworks like Bootstrap to skin it, and we use just the data binding from JSF. And this is probably true, that frameworks like JSF and ASP.NET, web forms or whatever, use stateful stuff on stateless HTTP protocol. So and they say JSF moves in the right direction. So but is a little too late. So I don't think it's little too late, because if so the startups from last year were very successful and they are happy with JSF. So why it is too late if you choose something which is successful right now? So so I don't get it. So what I can tell you, you should never use JSF without looking at the components. So it's not like, you can decide behind the scenes, oh, JSF is great because it comes with Java EE, and without looking at the actual implementations of tables, trees, or whatever, just decide to use JSF because it's JSF. Okay. Is a plain JSF Bootstrap a good choice? Yet it is. Prime faces also, it really depends. If you have to work closely with designers, just use plain one. If you don't know what you are doing, just use prime faces, but show the prime faces to your clients. Starting with AngularJS is, I think, still reasonable, but as you probably know, Angular 2.0 would be completely different, and Angular 2.0 tooling right now is a little bit crazy, so you will have to create a lot of transpilers and stuff like this. What do you think about DukeScript? So what is DukeScript? So if you go to DukeScript is a really interesting framework. It even won a Duke Choice Award in 2014. So what DukeScript is, it is like a little bit GWT with data binding. And for the data binding, it uses Knockout.js. So how it looks like, you have the scene, you have the CSS skinning, and you can just use plain HTML with data binding to a model created in Java. Which is actually interesting, because it is like inverted GWT, which is a little bit, I would say, troublesome in GWT, is that the data binding is not that, comes not out of the box, and GWT tries to create the components. What DukeScript just does for you is the whole JSON serialization and data binding with Java is solved for you, but you have complete control over the look and feel using whatever HTML framework you like. So I think it is really pragmatic solution created by brilliant guys. As one of them, I think, is Jaroslav Tulach, which was really a great Java hacker, which created parts of NetBeans, or big parts of NetBeans. And my approach, however, is a little bit different. So what I did in most of my projects is we created the JAX-ORS or the RESTful API first, and because it was required to use for many clients, and then we use Angular, JavaFX, or whatever to create straight to the API. But this really looks reasonable to me. And the question is, as always, what happens if the core developers lose interest to support this? I don't think it happens, because they are very eager about this. But it is always, the question: what happens if the developers are no more motivated to support the frameworks, for instance? Will it stay lived? But in the community, how complicated it is to maintain the framework, and I asked the same question in GWT, JSF, or whatever. Okay, so this was a few words about DukeScript, and I hope Marcus is happy right now. So, very good. So I get some feedback on chat. So it's very perfect. So chat is no more lazy. So usually I get lots of feedback, like not feedback. Nothing happens in chat, but now I get eager developers. So talking about J2E initially and about JSF new version, where very true. Yeah. Also, very good. So you are probably on my side. So perfect. So what chat actually did, it was like rewrite of my statement, hopefully. So you are on my side, which is also nice. Always nice. So So ThoughtWorks, what's interesting, NAS1 is on trial. I really like a NAS1, but for different reasons, probably as ThoughtWorks. But interesting that they actually find out NAS1, and this is almost an adopt thing. So really interesting how they create this radar here. Probably we should create our own airhacks radar and put whatever we like here. Would be also nice. So. This actually great airhacks community. So this question was answered later, and the answer is perfectly valid. But the question is how this works. So, what is injection points in CDI? What injection points in CDI is? The name is the program. So, injection point means the point where it is injected. So what you can do here, you can get the information where this thing is going to be injected. So here I know the member, the declaring class, and the name. So I know the name of the declaring class. So this is the actual magic behind. So and what I do with that, I'm configuring the logger, and it seems like it's Java 8. So what happens then is the logger has a method which expects a string, which basically is a Java util function, I think, string consumer, and the info from the logger is dynamically, so it looks like the consumer interface is going to be implemented by the info. So you get injectable logger without knowing that it's a logger and it's used as a consumer. So this is, but forget about consumer and info. The key point is producers makes consumer injectable, and injection point from with the injection points is like the metadata where the stuff is getting to be injected. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So DukeScript is covered. Can I mix somehow MVC and ECB? Absolutely. So actually BCE or ECB patterns were implemented also for the view. I just misused them for Java E, and this just the adoption is great and it works perfectly. So what is the relation between MVC and ECB? So where's my drawing stuff? So the relation is the following. So in the client, so usually what I would like to see is a clear separation between the presentation and the business layer. Why? Because the observation is the following: the presentation changes more frequently than the business layer. So we need a clear boundary between both, and the boundary is the boundary. So this is the boundary. Usually in all my current project, it is really REST. So SOAP is no more existent. So then we have control and the entity. So this is just like reuse of common logic. So in ideal case, this would be the facade. This would be just chunks of functionality, and this would be the domain object. So, but the MVC pattern or MVP, model view presenter, would start here. So here we would get a view, a controller, a model, and probably even model or service. So, and the service will talk to this, and the controller will try to fetch the data, and this is the view, this is the controller, and this is the model, MVC, and the controller, depending on whether this is present passive view or supervising controller, the view could be bound to the model, or the controller will just somehow populate the view with the data from the model. So you can combine both. And BCE is usually on the server, and MVC or MVP on the client. And for instance, the Afterburner is one MVC or MVP implementation. And I mix MVC and MVP always with BCE on the server. I hope it's crystal clear right now. Okay. Perfect. So what's here? Very good question. Adam, have you tried to make work CDI inject into struts to action? Weld apparently is not able to inject into action classes even if beans is inside webinf and the CDI plugin is present in lib. In one project, we did a prototype and it worked well. And what I did is I helped the Vaadin guys to make it injectable to the Vaadin application classes. And if you have, what you will have to do, you have to modify the struts to framework a bit, so you will create the action and then you can make it injectable. This is you can absolutely make it. So yes, I did it as a proof of concept and it worked, And the story was we had to migrate from Struts 1 to Java EE 6 or 7 back then. And we made it work. So it would work. Again, look on my GitHub account or somewhere. There should be a project like Vaadin Java EE integration. And you can basically, what we did, I actually forgot the name of the, I think beans. There's the beans is the, like the, you know, the God factory in CDI. And then you can fetch your own, create your own classes. And whatever happens in these classes is injectable. So, okay. Now we can close the radar. So opinion about DukeScript, MVC, view model, and what is a component? Okay, so further. Data model, view model, I think we covered this. What is a component in my perspective? This is a very good one. What a component is, if I talk about components, I talk about Java packages, which usually only live on the server. So I will try to put this. So I would try to place the whole thing here in a folder. And the great challenge is to find a good name for the folder. So what the name should do, it should describe what are the contents of the package here. So this is the main job of this. And it will describe the abstraction basically. And the folder becomes then a component. So what a component is a Java package with maximal cohesion, minimal coupling. So maximal cohesion means the classes should fulfill similar tasks. So let's say this component is like streaming component from the first question. So whatever is placed in the package streaming should be streaming related. So what in turn means is the name should be accurate, and this is why in all of my projects, or the name should be precise. Something like common utils, frameworks, base or whatever is not allowed. Maximal cohesion, minimal coupling. Minimal coupling means a component should be not tightly coupled to other component, or the relation should be the contents of the component talk a lot, which is other, but the components are loosely coupled, but sometimes they have to talk. But usually you should attempt to design loosely coupled components. Okay, I hope it's crystal clear right now. Yeah. And this is also an interesting one. I actually never mentioned that I built my own servers. What I did a few years ago, I started to mention it sometimes, and the reason was what I saw is now for unknown reasons, the decoupling between reality and the costs where my clients have to pay for the servers. And I also built my own servers, and I saw that they are orders of magnitude cheaper than the actually servers for my clients. And the question here, and I get similar question a little bit later, is how I create the components and how to build a system. So what I would like to do is I would just show you how to create one. So what I also did first, I look up Sun hardware, so weather, and surprisingly there were entry point Sun servers back then, and Oracle servers back then, which were actually not that expensive. The only problem was to buy one. So in Germany it was really hard to buy something from Sun, which probably this was the reason why Sun was not that successful, I think. But then I find out, okay, if I cannot buy one, I have to create one. How I did it? So I assumed I started with always with the CPU. So if you go to Intel, so this is what I started with, and there was products. Let's say I think is let's start with Intel.com is better. So, but it goes. You have to look at the German description. So there was processors, and I think I started with the E5. And my criteria was there was some specs. You have to look for the specs. Products. It looks a little bit differently. And specs. Oh, wait a second. Here. Oh, this is what you need. And this is mobile and desktop, and somewhere there should be a server. So usually what you get is a little bit a table with all processors, not like this. And they just modified the page recently. And what I usually look for is the Xeon CPUs. And this is just the mobile, but let's assume this were servers. And this is actually a pity because the servers are not that expensive. Oh, this looks nicer. So let's say desktop, server, and the E5. The E7 doesn't work for me because they consume too much power. So I usually go here. This is exactly what I look for. So and you see the power here, number of cores, and this is the price. And my has around 85 watts or something like this. So it has 8 cores and is probably one of these. So this E5 is a little bit faster than this. Could be something like this. As you can see, you get them around 600 to 900 euros. So in starting with this, you go to the processors, assume you would like to buy this one. So, and there is somewhere you have to find, you know, the socket. So the memory and the socket version. And with this information, the supported memory and the socket, you need on board. This is what I do next. So I go usually to Supermicro. This is my choice. It's like there are server grade boards, and I'm searching for a board which supports the memory and SSDs. So then I look for the current SSD, and I try to order an SSD with lots of capacity. But I just use a fraction of this, and this is called, I think, over provisioning. So what happens then, they live longer, the SSDs. So I buy 4 SSDs, and usually I set up an RAID array of the SSDs, and then I look for power supply with platinum grade power supply, because memory consumption is the most important thing to me. And at the very, very end, I have some fun and try to buy the best looking chassis. So the last one was created by BMW USA. I didn't even knew that BMW designs, you know, the chassis for the servers, and it looks great. And the total costs were about 2,000 euros. So you could consider lots of money, but this is a really high-end server as with 32 GB of RAM ECC. And so in my current server, I also built a new one, and it will come in production probably in November or December. Right now is no time, you know, to switch the software to the new one. So I hope you get, this is my way of creating servers. Probably there's a different way, but this always worked, and it was very fast. So usually in one night, I just order all the parts and then dry assembled everything. So this is what I did. And I bought everything on Amazon. So so without any rabbits. So now, and if you, why I did it, because I would like to learn and see how it costs, how much it costs, so I can go to my clients. I look, you know, you're paying 50K for your server, and actually it is worth 2K, so something wrong with you. And if you have no such interests, so just buy off the shelf. So if you go to Amazon, you can buy a server from HP for 400 euros, and it's also nice. So actually, this 2K is still a lot of money. And my server doesn't have any graphics. It's just 2 network cards. Oh, network card. I get additional network cards, so you will need 2. So Martin asked how to use CDI and faces converter, and the answer is in 2.2 faces converter. I think what Martin would like to do is to inject something to faces converter, and this does not work in JSF 2.2, but will work in JSF 2 and 3. And how to make it work in JSF 2.2? You will have to make it a weld component, so you will have to use a named annotation, for instance. Okay, so next question. Here, no questions. No questions. No questions in Twitter. Wow. No questions in Twitter. Okay. The next question is ESB evaluation, Enterprise Service Bus. And in my current projects, we were faced with ESB. And my question is, please explain you how ESB will make our life simpler or how we will save money. And they were not able to tell us this. And this is suspicious. Because for me, any technology, how to evaluate a technology, there should be, something like a killer feature or killer reason to use it. It should be, or if not a killer reason, it should be very easy to understand why you need ESB, for instance. And now the explanation. We would like to use it as a message broker between our services. So the question, okay, I understand this is like the mediator between the services, but which problem would you like to solve? Would you like to create a simpler API, for instance, to your clients? Or why you need this? So we also think about using it to develop service that contains a lot of mapping, orchestration, and flows. In one point of time, the ESB will come with lots of business logic, and you will have to develop this business logic as well. So the question is ESB the right choice right now for this? And maybe even plain business services instead of using our primary platform Java EE. So this is what I meant. So what it would mean, your primary business logic would run inside the ESB. Nothing wrong with this, but forget about Java EE. What Java EE actually is something which runs your POJOs. So actually, I would say Java EE right now, there is no coupling to the platform. So what you will end up having is controls are all POJOs. You will get probably a view classes annotated with @inject and @path, and everything else is a POJO. And the question is how it would look like in an ESB, how it can be even simpler than in Java EE. This is the most interesting question. Faster to develop? I don't know. Look at the effective Java EE tutorial. The question is, would you really faster with ESB? This is the question. So I created a full stack application and explained what I actually did. The question is, if I had ESB, would be faster? Easy to understand for developers. This is what I never saw. So what I actually always do if I'm in SOA projects or ESB project, I ask the developers, do you really like the technology? And I cannot remember when the developers were excited about ESB. Easy to maintain, it really depends how it looks like, right? So if you have a Java EE, proper built Java EE system, it's really just POJOs. And more lightweight, I think there is nothing lightweight. So the question is, what does lightweight actually mean? Is it the hard disk space? Is it RAM? Or what is it? So they would be my thoughts. So actually, I have no more thoughts than this. I would have to know which particular problem would you like to solve. And I think something like Apache Camel and ESB would be a reasonable solution if you had a lot of proprietary APIs and systems, and ESB or Camel would come with ready-to-use integrations or adapters or components, like this is what we called back then EAI, Enterprise Application Integration, and then you can use the stock adapters to talk to proprietary native APIs. This where I would see a huge advantage of something like ESB. Just orchestration. For instance, what we do a lot is, I mentioned it earlier, the Java EE, my Java EE projects are exposing REST services to the outside world. So what it actually means is you can use just Angular app and just invoke whatever service you like. So the question is why you would like to introduce another layer on the server just to aggregate the services. The whole internet works that way, that if you're building a website, you can pull services from whatever service you like. So there is never an intermediary layer which orchestrates the services. Okay, I hope it's crystal clear. So I will just briefly look at the chat. No questions here. Oh, one question at the airhacks channel. Oh, Spleen is happy. Perfect. So what's here? Okay. The first question on Twitter. So now we have the Twitter is lazier than chat. So I have a question: MVC component based versus action based. This is a good one. So Java JSF is component based. Why? Because you have something like a button or table, and action based framework is not modeling the components rather than controllers. So for instance, the new MVC framework is an action based framework. What is better? I would say with component based frameworks, you can be lazier if the components suit your needs, if this is what you like. With action-based frameworks, you are free to design the UI freely. So the concept is a little bit different. In JSF, you don't have to understand HTML a lot, I would say, if you have a great components. And in action-based framework, you get data binding and server-side rendering, but you will have to create your own templates by hand. What is better? It depends. So yeah, JSF would be great for flow-like applications with lots of subsequent pages, and MVC or action-based frameworks, in my eyes, are great for let's say single-page applications to increase your SEO rates. Okay, this one I will try to come back to the chat a little bit later, because Spleen has lots of questions right now, became active, and I hope Victor is happy. Should be very happy. So, does JavaFX follow passive view MVP design pattern by Martin Fowler? So passive view Fowler, and this is an old pattern. And what the gist of the pattern is the following. There's something. What is it again? So it basically says the view doesn't do anything. The controller cares about the coordination between the model and the view is extremely passive. So you can easily replace the view and for testing, for instance. And JavaFX it really depends how you define the controller, right? Because if you go to JavaFX, if you use JavaFX with Scene Builder, for instance, so what you will get is the view and the presenter. So in the view, this is the view, and this is the presenter, which is also a controller. And the view is created from FXML. So it was populated from FXML, and the controller was instantiated by FXML, but built by the developer. So this is the relation. So there is a data binding, so you can implement data binding between the view and the controller. And passive view doesn't support data binding, but you could consider this as a unit and then say, okay, there is no data binding between the view and the model. This is actually what passive view states. So in passive view, which is not allowed that the view knows the model. And then it would be supervising controller. So I would say JavaFX could support both, and Afterburner is more supervising controller than a passive view. Okay, but the question is, is it relevant? What it actually is, because it's really a blurring line whether the view and the controller are a unit. So this is more like MVVM from Microsoft, model view view model pattern from Microsoft. This is what actually Afterburner is very similar to. So okay, so what passive view means the view does not use data binding, and supervising controller allows data binding. So the view can bind directly to model. In passive view, the controller will extract a model and populate the view. So this is the difference between both. Okay. Next one, also a good one. So basically, there's a Tommy application server, which uses, I think, is Apache Portable Runtime, which is probably the way how to communicate, how the Apache communicates with the Tommy. And the problem is there are deadlocks, and the question is how to inspect such deadlocks. And there is a hint. Our web apps uses many stateless session beans in views singleton beans. And the singleton beans could be already a problem. So if you're using singleton beans, EJB is singleton, there is a locking. There will be no more than one thread who accesses the singleton beans. So what you have to look at is concurrency management bean. So you will disable the locking. This could be interesting. And if your singleton beans, for instance, is a timer bean, and is also accessed from the outside, this could also cause callbacks. So deadlocks. Now, the question is Java Mission Control, how to use it. What I will probably do is to record a session how to do this. But what Java Mission Control comes with is the flight recorder. What I have to mention is, if you would like to use Java Mission Control in production, you will have to pay license fees. If you go to my blog, I found the pointer from Oracle, so go to my blog and search for Java Mission Control and license or something. So, given you have the license, you can run your Tommy using Java Mission Control. There's like unlock commercial features flag, and then you can connect with Java Mission Control, and it will record whatever happens on the server. And then you can find the deadlocks. So actually, if deadlock happens, you can just walk there and see where the lock happens. And this is how I resolve multiple deadlocks, not in Java EE, outside of Java EE, in Java SE applications, which was really hard to do without Java Mission Control. So Java Mission Control is the right tool for the job. And what can also happen in your case, if you, for instance, building a streaming application, what can happen that the Apache server died? Or so what you also should do, I think there's HTTP D status call or function. If you do this, you will dump all these threads the Apache is currently using. So what I also had are some concurrency issues with my own X-ray software back then, a few years ago. So I also had similar issues, like it just stuck. And what I saw then, that the Apache server, has lots of open connections, so the server was no more responsive. And then I tried to find the real problem. What could also a problem if you have a component which invokes an API from the own server, so you get basically a loop which can also make it unresponsive. But it's really hard to say, from the distance what is actually the problem in your case. But JMC is the right tool to use it. So, and this is actually the great answer to the good question from what happens behind the scenes here. And this is also a very good one, because I get also several questions about this. It's like when CDI is perfect and when EJB is perfect. So side note, nothing is perfect, but I know what you mean. And EJB model is perfect for clustering, highly concurrent transactions, security, timer, asynchronous processes, mission critical, complex financial applications, and so forth. I would say, I think whatever we do is concurrent, whether it is highly concurrent or just concurrent, it does not matter. Clustering is really not needed. Security should be secure, of course. Timer is a timer and asynchronous processes. Asynchronous processes in Java 7 can be easily implemented without EJBs using just the concurrency utility for Java. Just look at the Porcupine. So, what is the difference between both? And I would say this is very similar. So what CDI is just a POJO with minimal amount of aspects. So it is a POJO, and the only aspects is the context, actually, the scoping. So request, application scope, and stuff like this. So this is CDI. What EJB is, for instance, at stateless, is a POJO with built-in aspects. So if you create a POJO with a stateless on it, so what you will get, you get pooling. So what means pooling? You can say, I just restrict the pool size to 500. So there will be no more than 500 instances of stateless session bean. So you can throttle the traffic, which is very hard to do with CDI. So you will have to use thread pools for this purpose. And transactions. So whatever you do with EJBs is transactional, and the convention is great. So the first call will start a transaction, the transaction is going to be reused, and there are no transactions first in CDI, but you can configure them. So basically you can achieve the same with CDIs and EJBs, but with EJBs the code is going to be simpler. So you just put a stateless on an EJB, you are done. To achieve the same with CDI, you will have to implement, you know, your code would look like here, let's say service, and then you will have to do like transactional pooled monitorable, so you get monitoring for free, and throttled and whatever. And of course you are very flexible, or you can just say service, this is EJB. So I would consider this as a simpler version of this. At the end of the day, everything will work with dynamic proxies or some decorators. So from the technological perspective, they are almost identical. The question is, what do you prefer? You prefer this, or you would like to have the full control of this? This may look like more flexible, but I have to admit, all my controls are this, period. So I never did something with it. So I could also create my boundaries with CDI. The only question is why I should implement all my decorators and by myself if we have already EJBs. So if you are lazy, use EJBs. If you are eager to exploring things, use CDI. So it actually does not matter. This is a very good one. Sorry for the long questions. I didn't have much time to write less. This is an unknown quote. I forgot actually the author, but it was not spleen. So we covered actually this one. So the question is how to expose just JAX-RS with more than one RESTful APIs, which the one will be used internally and the other one publicly. Easy one. I think JAX-RS multiple. Let's see just multiple. Oh, perfect. So this is the answer. So what you can do, you can have multiple entry points, JAX-RS configuration 1 and JAX-RS configuration 2, and then this one exposes this one, and this one exposes this one. And usually what you will have an web server before as a facade to the application server, and you can, for instance, set up this mod.jk just to expose one of them, and the other one is going to be hidden. So it comes with built-in Java security, so we can say one is available to all guests, and the second is only available to the admins. So you can set up this in the standard stock web XML. Perfect. Next one. Afterburner in multi-page application. So I forgot actually to light view. Oh, I installed new Java. So if you go to Lightfish and the light view, I would consider this as a Java minus jar, let's say target. Perfect. So this is a multi-view application with different tabs, and this would I introduce Afterburner after the fact. And I think in JavaFX there is, I think it's called stack pane. So you have you can have panes above a pane. So what you can easily do with stock Afterburner, you can create of one type of the view multiple instances, or you can have one main pane, and in the controller you can replace the pane. So what I have here, as far as I remember, I have one presenter which cares about the whole area here. And then this presenter activates the other presenters and the views. So this is the basic question, whether they are tabs or just, one main area as an AngularJS, which gets replaced by whatever action, is actually the same story. So look at the light fish and light view, and I think it's basically the answer to your question. Yeah, it uses, it tries to connect to Glassfish and fetch the monitoring data, but it's not available. So, what is the best way to handle errors and exceptions? You can use set default uncaught exception handler. The question was, we had to similar problems. I was asked how to resolve the problems in JavaFX and Swing applications, so how to deal with exceptions. The question is, what the user can do with the information first. So is the exception, can the user do something about this, and whether the user can continue the work. And what we have in Afterburner or JavaFX, usually you will get a presenter, and the presenter talks to the backend. So if the backend is not available, how to proceed? So if you say, okay, if the backend is not available, then the application should quit. Then you can use something like default uncaught exception handler, and register like a default handler which listens to particular exceptions, and then just shuts down the application and say like, dear user, try again tomorrow or whatever. But what you probably is better to do is to wrap all the communication with the backend and just provide more reasonable exception handling. And what reasonable could be, you can gather the exceptions, write a small log, and send it back to the server for monitoring purposes, for instance, or diagnostic purposes, or whatever. So the question is, what you would like to achieve, and what is the user experience? So for what you would like to use exceptions. And in general, I see two types of exceptions, like system exceptions, where like null pointer, where they're really hard to handle, and business exceptions or application exceptions, exceptions which belong to the business logic, where the user does something which is not illegal, but invalid input or something. This exception can be very well handled in the presenter. Just for instance, mark text fields. What we did, for instance, particular exceptions were converted. And what the handling was, we just loaded different CSS style, which marked the text fields as red, for instance. This was the exception handling for input validation. So this is the basic answer. So what do you think about reactive programming? So the reactive programming is like the main idea of reactive programming is observer on steroids. So the observer pattern on steroids. This is the idea, and it goes a little bit further. So it's like a stream of events. You can register to the stream and react onto new events, and usually reactive programming comes with a DSL, domain-specific language, which makes it a little bit easier. And the typical thing is like you're waiting, 5 times, then you are doing something with the event, and on exceptions you can wait a bit and retry so it gets full DSL. But in my enterprise applications, I never saw the killer use case for this. It could be in the streaming case, or it could be if you're building brokerage applications, or you're building, I don't know, real-time event processing or something like this. This could be a big thing. In my Java EE projects, I don't see the killer use case. So we are very happy without that thing. And if you go to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, and search for reactive programming in JavaFX, I show you an reactive programming with nothing but Java 8. So you can perfectly do it. So what you would need is something like stream of events, and you will have to react to it the whole time. And this is a typical case for reactive programming. And in user interface. So it's also, I think, in JavaScript, because, for instance, in JavaFX, give you another, you have lots of JavaFX. So in JavaFX, what we did, if in reactive programming, we did the following, for instance. If the text field is not, if the address is not filled in, and let's say the payment data is not filled, then the button is not active. And you can create it with data binding in JavaFX very easily, and I will consider this as reactive, because if you change the state of the components, the state of the button changes automatically. Just go to the YouTube channel and look at the example. I would consider this reactive programming. So we use reactive programming for JavaFX input validation, and this was really great. So it really saved time, and it was very easy unit testable. Question is, what is the best way to integrate microservices? So I think the best way is to avoid microservices and build a monolithic apps as long as possible. And you have to have a really compelling reasons to use microservices. This is what we do in my projects. And the reasons could be lifecycle, different departments, Conway's law, whatever. But just don't do microservices because you had our session on a conference. And how to integrate them? What we did in the recent projects, there was no integration layer. The AngularJS app or JavaFX app used the services directly. So the integrator was the service on the client side, and the microservices were fully decoupled. So this worked perfectly well. What are your thoughts on service bus for integration? It might be an interesting option if you have a problem. So you would say, okay, I have the following problem, 5 services which are completely different, whatever, and then the service bus would look like this, and then is it a solution or not? I think the best case is always try to implement, a proof of concept with a view classes and then decide. Funny story, in a workshop, someone asked me, what is my favorite ESB implementation? And they already mentioned Mule and I think Apache Camel. And there is not only Camel, there is something on top of Camel, I forgot the name. And my answer was, before you're evaluating the ESB, implement a very simple Java application and try to integrate with a view POJOs. And then I got a response back, it's like, it was the best answer ever. The implementation of the full application was less complicated than the evaluation, just the evaluation of the ESB. So just build a proof of concept or a spike and then decide with source code, not just with slides. So this is the question which I think I already answered the question regarding the setup and provider. What I have is in Germany is like a business line, so I pay monthly fees. I have dedicated IP address, and what I hosted at the beginning, I had my own mail server. It was Apache James. So I even extended this, and this is a mail server, Java Apache Mail Enterprise server. Really interesting solution, so I use this a lot. Then I had also my, not my own, I used DNS, it was bind. And right now there is no more mails and no more DNS on my server. I just use, there are I think 10 Docker containers with Whitefly, Payara and Tommy application servers. And one Apache, and this basically is. And the workshop registrations, my whole blog, my whatever you see on the whole airhack stuff is running on my server. And yeah, I really enjoy this. And yeah, this is basically the answer. How this hardware is connected, the server is in my basement. So this is, it runs there since the year 2000. So in the year 2000, I created my own server. And the bandwidth is optimized. If you go to my blog, you will find there are no trackers, almost no JavaScript. Is what is the plain Blogger template. Now Apache WebLogger template. So I try to minimize the bandwidth. In truth, this is why I never have pictures on my blog, because the bandwidth will kill me. So it will just stop. Stop the. I have the fastest possible connection in my area, but it's still too slow if I would deliver pictures or videos or something like this. What I could recommend, I think whatever you choose in Germany, there's no great option, you know, for internet providers. It's really hard to say. So I would just ask, you know, what would cost to have an fixed IP address, and are you allowed actually to deliver content? So for me, I have a business connection, so it is allowed. It's not a problem. So just ask. It is not as expensive as it was one day. I think in the beginning I paid 1,000 D-Mark, is like 500 euros a month. Now it's a fraction of this, so it is cheaper than back then. Oh, 4 hours ago, the last question is the 19th question. When using an application server, is there a way to route logs from the server components to my own log files? Yes, all application servers you can configure with Log4j, for instance. And if you go beyond this, what I usually use is Logstash. How I can make the server log in my logs per application manner. We did it actually in Glassfish several times because we wanted to separate my logs from the application server logs. And this is a typical Log4j configuration. And I remember Glassfish back then had an issue where it was hard to introduce your own Log4j configuration, something like this, and then but it was resolved later. So this is a very application server specific, and what you will have to do is to configure the logging in that way that the Glassfish or Whitefly in this case will use different logs for system logging, and you could use your own log files for your logging. And if you what I also take a look at Logstash. So what Logstash would do, what you can do then is you could just log directly to Logstash and then provide your own tags, and the tags with the tags you can filter later your log files for whatever criteria you like. Okay, almost done. So I think it's one of the longest sessions. Wow, the Spleen. Oh, Blaise Pascal. Mark Twain, Spleen is great. So the last mention from Spleen, so very good. So from Deependra. Exactly, JStat or Java Visual VM. Yeah, what I forgot to mention is what you should always do in more. Thanks, Deependra, for your comments. So in more ambitious applications, what we always do, and it is always forgotten for unknown reasons, is we try to implement our additional business monitoring, or we call it cockpit sometimes. So what it means, we say, okay, right now we are processing 5 concurrent streams, and 5 users are connected, and our server consumes I don't know, 500 megs of memory. And the beginning of this, I created a project called Ping on my GitHub account. So what it just does is just emits, the basic information like memory and number of CPU threads and CPUs or whatever. And I use in my Docker containers to see whether the applications are basically running. So it's like pinging the applications. And what you will need is sometimes it is called synthetic transactions. So what synthetic transactions mean is you are creating a transaction, and which is like a fake order, for instance, and the transaction runs through the system, and you see whether the system responds or actually works. So what you will need in any serious application, additional monitoring beyond technical monitoring, just exposing the essential use cases, and then you can say more about this. Okay, now back to Spleen. Solid. Uncle Bob Martin was very explicit with the interfaces, and I think I don't know, like a hexagon architecture where he has like a kernel with outside view. So, and I have to say, what I begin to see is, I think the Green Book is already, I don't know, 4 to 5 years old, so about 4 years old. And back then I started, or I was 2 years older, so since 6 years I'm building the applications what I propagate, like no interfaces, just EGBs and very simple. And what I can tell right now, there was actually, I never heard any criticism beyond the naming, so naming is okay. It really worked well in projects, developers were happy and it was simple. And all my contracts were shorter than expected, so the client say, okay, it is now easy enough, so we don't need you anymore, which is a very good sign. So it is really hard to say what I could improve to make it even simpler. And the Uncle Bob Martin is a little bit more, how to say it, it likes to be perfect, introducing interface, make everything replaceable. And I don't believe in such extensibility or flexibility anymore. What usually happens, we are building applications, what is needed right now for the client. If it is testable and is simple, everyone is happy. So this is, I would say, my general idea. So what I saw, it is really not worth to think about extensibility and replacements and interfaces upfront. What we do, we create the simplest possible solution right now with Java EE, because there's nothing simple like this. You can download the server and just go for it. And yeah, this is the basic idea. And DTO and DAO, data transfer object, we have it in Java 7. It's called JSON. So most of my Java applications expose JSON in one. I think if you need a perfect REST API, you will end up using JSON-P, this JSON API for how it's called, JSON processing API for Java 7. And then JSON is actually a map, a hash map is your DTO. This is the one mapping layer. And data access object is already implemented, and the name for this is entity manager. So yes, we use DAO, but the entity manager is the perfect DAO. Also look at the domain store pattern. So domain store pattern. We can do it because it's fun. Domain store Java EE patterns. So if you go, but I cannot find it. Oh, because the name is J2E patterns, I think. Yes. So the funny story, this is the domain store pattern. And this is, I think, from 2006 or 2003. There's somewhere should be 2006. It was updated, but the origin is even older. So if you look at the persistence manager and the methods and the persistence manager factory, and you rename this to entity manager factory, you will see that the domain store pattern is actually a DAO pattern. So the domain store or the domain store pattern is DAO 2.0. Now, if we go to the pattern catalog, where is it? There should be an overview of all the patterns. Here is it. The funny story is the domain store pattern, which we dissected right now, uses data access object. So what it means? The entity manager implements DAO 2.0 and has to use data access object, which probably does internally, but this is out of scope. So what it means, data access object is that in standard Java EE application which talk to a relational databases, and even non-relational databases go to data nucleus. For instance, data nucleus. It is like JPA implementation with lots of implementations, and there are entity manager implementations for Cassandra and whatever. So I don't use DAOs anymore in standard cases. But if I have to talk to JNDI, LDAP, or whatever is ugly, I always use DAO because it is worth to simplify the interface. Okay, I think we are done. No, 2 questions here. No questions? Okay, just a statement. So I would say it's the longest session ever, which is great. Thank you for watching. See you in Munich. Munich workshops. See you in Munich, or if you cannot come to Munich, effective Java EE. This is for 4 weeks, an online edition, so you can go from here to here. This is the online edition of the framework. And yeah, see you soon in October. Thank you and bye.